Hello everyone, my name is Noah.
And I'm Alessandro from the Google Developers team.
We would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today for GDG DevParty, an event organized by 5 Google developer groups in the UK and Ireland.
Now, while this event will of course be a bit different to your usual GDG meetup, we think it's going to be a lot of fun and perhaps a rare opportunity to get to know fellow developers from all over the UK and Ireland, and maybe beyond.
Although the current situation is far from being ideal, we are really excited to have so many people from all over getting together and sharing ideas.
It's fantastic that we are able to get together like this, even if it's only through our screens. And now, we will let the GDG organizers tell you more about them and kick off the event.
Enjoy the Dev Party!
So, just to introduce ourselves, this is the team that has worked to organize DevParty. We are a group of leads from a mixture of different GDGs, including London, Oxford, Southampton, Galway, and Milton Keynes.
Hello, I'm Bushra, and I'm from GDG Oxford, and I'm one of the moderators for the machine learning track today.
Hi, I'm Jason from GDG Milton Keynes, and today I'm working on the YouTube live streaming for this event.
I am Casey Nur from GDG Oxford.
My name is Karthik Nuli and I'm from GDG Southampton.
Hi everyone, my name is Oscar McCauley and I'm from GDG Southampton, and I'm going to be a moderator on the machine learning track today.
Hi, my name is Shadab and I am from GDG Galway.
Hi everyone, this is Jen Ashley from GDG London.
Hi, my name is Swapnil and I'm from GDG Galway. And today I will be giving a talk on Google Cloud storage options along with demos.
I'm Antoine Danois, Android developer at CityMapper, and I will be a moderator for the mobile track, and I'm part of the GDG London.
Hi everyone, my name is Goran from GDG London, and I will be one of the cloud moderators for today.
My name is Vladimir Salin. I'm a software engineer at Optelum from GDG Oxford. I will be a moderator on the cloud track.
Hi, my name's Eddie, and I helped put together this video intro. I have a YouTube channel focusing on open source. You can always catch me there.
So, before we get into the talks, let's just go through what you can expect from today and how the event is going to be structured.
As you're probably aware by now, the event is going to be split into 4 tracks running in parallel, each representing a different topic. Today we've got a great range of topics. We've got a track for mobile, one for cloud technologies, another covering machine learning, with the final track covering issues of diversity and ethics in the world of software development.
These tracks will contain 3 sessions, each session lasting 45 minutes. These sessions will contain a 30-minute talk and a Q&A at the end. When the Q&A is finished, there will be a 5-minute break to swap over between speakers. At this time, if you want to change tracks to listen to another topic, you are welcome to do so.
Once all the talks have finished at around 7 p.m., we'll then all get together in a Google Meet call for a party. This is meant to be a bit of fun where you can just chat to other developers that you might have met throughout the day and perhaps make valuable connections you wouldn't have otherwise been able to. Obviously, not everyone has the time to sit and chat for a long time, so we'll officially end the event at 7:15 p.m. But those who want to stick around on the Google Meet call for longer are more than welcome to.
Here's another reason you might want to join the party at the end though. So those who tweeted out #GDG DevParty throughout the day on Twitter and managed to join the party at the end will be in with a chance to win one of 3 prizes. We'll be giving away a Google Chromecast, a Nest Hub, and a Nest Mini to 3 lucky winners who tweeted out #GDG DevParty on Twitter. So make sure to get tweeting and to join the party at the end where we'll announce the winners.
That was a quick rundown of how our time together is going to be split up. But we highly recommend for you to go and have a look at the tracks and schedules section of the DevParty website. This will allow you to plan which talks you want to watch.
Additionally, I would like to explain how each track will be organized in terms of what platforms the talk will be taking place on and how you can interact with the discussion.
The sessions will be held on YouTube Live, with the link to each track's live stream being posted on the DevParty Slack channel. For the link to the Slack channel, see the DevParty website, where there is a link to join under the How to Participate section. This means you can seamlessly switch between tracks after a talk has finished by closing one live stream and opening another through the links provided on Slack.
YouTube Live will allow you to post comments so that you can ask questions throughout the talk, which will then be read by the moderator and posted to the speaker. Please do understand that the speaker might not be able to answer every question due to time constraints. So obviously, please be sensible with your questions. We want to make the session as interactive as possible, so please don't be afraid to put forward your thoughts and engage with the talk throughout the comments.
So, thank you for listening. We hope you have a wonderful time and gain some great insights into whichever topics you choose to explore today. If you encounter any problems, please let us know through the Slack channel. But for now, get comfortable and wait for the first talks to begin.
Welcome to the DevParty.
Hey, welcome everyone. On behalf of the GDG UK and Ireland, I'm really excited to welcome you to the DevParty. Welcome to the mobile track. We are going to have 3 really great speakers today. We are your host for today. I'm Antoine Danois. I'm an Android developer at CityMapper, and I'm from the GDG London.
And I'm Karthik Nudi. I'm from GDG Southampton, and I'm currently a student at Southampton University. Awesome. So we have a bit of housekeeping. So there's 3 sessions, each 30 minutes, with a 15-minute Q&A at the end. For the Q&A, write your questions in the YouTube chat, which should be to the right of the screen. And please have a look at the code of conduct, which is at the URL provided. For social media, use the hashtag GDG DevParty and join us at the party at 7 p.m. and make sure to tweet about the event to get the prizes.
So the agenda of our event. So like you probably know, we are 4 track, 1 mobile, 1 cloud, 1 machine learning, and 1 ethics and diversity. Today, right now, you are on the mobile track. So we have 3 great speakers. We have Nicola Corti, Android infrastructure engineer at Spotify, Devops-ify, your life with GitHub Actions. It's a really great talk just because at least there is a pun in the title. So yeah, just after this introduction. And then at 5:30, we have Paul Ruiz, developer programs engineer for Firebase, with his talk, Rapid Prototyping with Flutter and Firebase. And at 6:15, we have Stacy Devino, customer mobile experiences at Nike, and she's going to speak about Exoplayer to the rescue. Another great pun in the title. It's great. So yeah, the next session is starting at 4:45 with Nicola. During that time, you can read the code of conduct, tweet, do everything on social media with the hashtag GDG Party. Don't forget the party at the end and the prizes. And also you can join the Slack to talk with us and also to talk with our speakers. Thank you. See you at 4:45.
Thank you.
And it's time to introduce our first speaker. Nicola Corti is working at Spotify, Android infrastructure engineer. Is going to talk with us about GitHub Actions, because yeah, it's really important to have a good CI for our project. So he's going to talk a bit more about this. Oh.
Awesome. So, do you hear me well? I hope so.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you, Antoine, for introducing me. And yeah, today we're going to talk about Devops-ify live with GitHub Actions. Just a couple of words on myself. So my name is Nicola Corti. I work as infrastructure engineer at Spotify, and that's my Twitter handle. And you can also find me on GitHub on that username. And those are my hobbies and things I like to do. Just one short note: if you actually go on twitter.com/cortinico, there are slides over there. So the slides are already there. They are pinned. So this is already sorted out. You can follow during the presentation if you want, or you can use it afterwards if you're interested. Hopefully you will find the presentation useful. So the talk of today, it's going to be all about continuous integration and continuous delivery. I wanted to mention that this can be like an introduction talk about continuous integration, especially if you never work with that. But I wanted to rehearse a little bit on the concepts of continuous integration and continuous delivery. So what is exactly continuous integration? It's a process, and it's something that I really wish everyone has in their repositories whenever they develop something. And it all starts from your source code. So assume you have your source code that is versioned with something like Git, and we're gonna call the current status of your code as master. So you have master, well, all your code is, and you want to integrate new changes within master. So here is where the process of continuous integration actually kicks in. So how will we integrate new changes? So at a certain point, one developer has to develop a new feature or has to fix a bug. So he or she opens a new pull request or a merge request or a change request. This is not GitHub specific. It's just like there is the intention of adding new code within master. Here, the loop of the continuous integration actually starts. So the continuous integration is this process where the first step is generally like run a build. And running a build can be seen as actually running tests. So if I integrate new code, the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that my code compiles. So I want to make sure that if I have a code base that compiles, the next step, the next integration will actually compile as well. So this is the first step, the first test that we want to do. Then there are actually real tests. So for example, A/B test, JUnit test, integration test, etc., etc. So you might have tests that you want to run to ensure the quality of your code. And then you could have some other tools like static analyzers or tools that investigate your code to try to spot bugs early upfront in this loop. Usually there is like a feedback loop, so the developers is informed if what's the status of this, if the build failed, if there are tests that failed, if there are potential bugs that got discovered. Usually there is also a human factor in this process. So there is like a human code review. So another developer needs to check the quality of the code. And when everything is green and everyone is happy, we integrate inside master. So we add new code to the code base. This loop can happen once or more time, depending on how many iterations the developer needs to do to make everyone happy and to integrate new code. So now let's move a little bit more on the continuous delivery side. So again, we have master, and at a certain point, we want to make a new release of our software, of our code. So we pick a version, we pick a certain moment in time, and we call it a candidate. So we say that this snapshot of the code base could potentially become the new version. The new version could mean like a new version of the app, a new version of a library, a new version of a dependency, whatsoever. So we pick a candidate and we see if this candidate is good enough and if we can make a version out of it. So what do? The first thing, we need to create an artifact. So we need to bundle our code to make it easy to consume for others. In the case of an Android app, this could mean like creating an APK or an app bundle. In the case of a library, this could mean creating like a jar or whatsoever. So you need to create the artifact out of your code base. Then there are generally other tests. Those could be the same test that we have during the continuous integration side, or they can be even more tests. So for example, a lot of the time with Android apps, you can imagine that you send your APK to some external team, they take the APK and they do more like detailed tests. And so this is something that you don't do every time that you do integration, but you do specifically only when you create a new release. And then you generally deploy. So for example, in the case of a mobile app, you could deploy to the Play Store, to the beta channel, to the alpha channel, or you could make your potential release artifact available to your group of users. And again, this loop can happen multiple times. You can have the alpha round, the beta round, the release candidate round. And then at a certain point, when everything is green, you actually create a new version. You say like, hey, this is app version 2.0. So those two loops are continuous integration and continuous delivery. And I wish that every developer has those kind of setups whenever they develop new code. Personally, whenever I create a new repo, the first thing that I do is setting up something like that. There are a lot of tools that helps you to set up something like your CI and CD pipeline. And we're going to see some of those. Like I want to spend some seconds talking about them. So in the open source community, one of the most famous is probably Travis CI and Circle CI. So they're both free for open source projects. So if you develop on GitHub, you might have seen a lot of projects that actually uses those. And they're not really complicated to set up. So I invite you to take a look. If you're doing a lot of mobile development, another CI that is famous is Bitrise. That's more like mobile oriented, while Travis and Circle, they generally work like for Node projects or Ruby projects, Python, whatsoever. Bitrise is more like mobile focused. And then there are more like enterprise solutions, for example, like TeamCity. They need to purchase like your workers. So it offers you more feature, but it's obviously like, it's not free for everyone. And the on-premise solution instead is Jenkins. So Jenkins is a CI software that you can download and install on your server and set up your CI pipeline like hosted on your server, wherever you want. So, but today we're going to talk about another one, that is GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions have been launched recently and they're pretty strong, and they're getting a lot of traction, specifically because they're integrated within GitHub. So if your development flow happens inside GitHub, you might find them really useful because they're just behind the corner. And with just behind the corner, I mean this. So this is a GitHub repo, and there is an action tab over there that you can just press and start running your CI within GitHub. You don't need to access any other service or install software on your machine. This basically works, let's say, out of the box, and we will see how later. Another point of force of GitHub Action is that it's actually free for public repositories. So if you do a lot of open source, you can use it without any limits. And this is really, really strong, and like it's a strong point, obviously. GitHub builds a lot of this, ecosystem around public repositories and open source repositories. But if you have private repo, you could also run it, and you have like 2,000 minutes included. So you can start running, and then obviously if you need more, if you have a bigger private repo, you need to pay for the minute that your CI runs. Another cool thing is that GitHub Actions has a really big marketplace. So right now there are like more than 3,000 actions already developed by others that you can use and compose. So maybe you need to do some specific tasks like signing your APK or uploading to the Play Store or running detect or doing whatsoever. Maybe another developer already wrote that, so you can use that action and compose it to create your own pipeline. And another strong point is that you can have runners that runs your CI on both Linux, macOS, and Windows. This is really powerful. For example, if you're developing a library and you want to make sure that all of your users are able to use it. And the other thing is that those runners, they are fully working and they have a lot of libraries that you don't need to install manually. So for example, this is the definition of what you find installed inside the latest Linux runner. So it runs Ubuntu 18.04. And it has a lot of libraries already inside. There is Git, whatsoever. But if you're doing Android development, and here we are in mobile track, so I'm going to focus a lot of my discussion around Android, you will find that the runner already has the Android SDK installed. So like if you played with CI in the past, like with Travis or SQL, you know that sometimes you end up in a situation where like you need to accept licenses and your CI is not running because licenses of Android are not accepted. This is not a thing anymore. Like here you have all the build tools already ready there. GitHub engineers make sure that they're updated. So it just works and it's awesome. So give it a try. So let's have a look at high level of how a GitHub action is defined and how we can shape it to fit our needs. So GitHub actions are all around workflows. What are workflows? Workflows are actually YAML file that lives inside the .github/workflows folder of your repo. So they're there, you can commit them, you can edit them. And you can have one, for example, the build one, or you can have more than one, like one for the build, one for the release, and another one for like, I don't know, a cleanup or whatsoever. So those workflows are triggered by triggers. So those are like events that starts the execution of one or more workflows. Let's see some example. Like some of those could be like open a new pull request or push to a branch or comment on an issue or to a pull request or a cron job, like something that runs every night at midnight. I don't know. And they connect. So there is a connection between triggers and workflows. For example, I could say that whenever I open a pull request, I want to build. Or I can say that whenever I push to master, I want to build. Or when I push to release, I want to do the release workflow that maybe will do other stuff. We'll create an APK or I don't know, whatever. I can say that whenever I comment with /lock on an issue, I want this cleanup workflow to start, and this will lock the issue for me. Or I could say that at every day at midnight, a cron job should start and should lock or label all the issues that are older, like, I don't know, the issues that are more than 7 days old, they should be marked as stale, for example. So inside those workflows, I can define then jobs. So jobs are like a unit of work and they have a name. So for example, here in build and release, I call it Gradle, but you could call it as you want. You could call it build. I generally call it Gradle because they do Gradle work, but you can call it as you wish. For example, in the cleanup workflow, you call it lock issues whatsoever. Why I'm telling you this? Because workflow can have one job or can have also more than one job. So for example, the release workflow could do Gradle and then upload to bin tray and upload to Sonatype. Those jobs can either run in parallel or sequential. So when you define your workflow, you can say do Gradle and then in parallel upload to bin tray and do Sonatype. And these will run in parallel. So now let's see an example of a workflow file because this will clarify a lot of things. So we're gonna make a workflow file to do run a build. So this is a YAML file, we have a name, it's called build, and here we have the trigger. So we want to run on push on every branches, and we want to run on every new pull request against every branches. So here we have the job. We have the first one, it's called Gradle, as I said before, and here we define where it should run. So this should run on Ubuntu latest. So I'm using the Linux worker. And there are some steps. So the first step, I want to check out the repo. And once I checked out the repo, I want to build everything. So in Android, for example, there are a lot of jobs, but I don't know, one that is really common is calling assemble. So if we call assemble, this will basically assemble everything. Like we'll create a debug and a release APK, and we'll create all the artifacts for all the libraries that you have. So let's take a closer look over here. So every step of your job should have either a uses or a run. So let's start from the run first. The run is as easy as a bash command. So there I'm telling that you should go inside a bash shell and run /gradle w assemble. That's easy. The uses instead will refer to another action. So in this case, we are using the action that is called actions/checkout. So if you go on github.com/actions/checkout, you will actually find a repo that contains this GitHub action, and you can see what it's doing. This @v2 is a reference to the version. So we are using version 2 of actions checkout. One little note, the actions that have actions in the first part are the first party actions. So this is provided from GitHub. So this is like, we are sure that they are safe. Like this is just doing a git checkout of the code. But we can also use others that are not from GitHub. And we will see later. So I spent a lot of the last weeks converting some open source repo that I'm maintaining or supporting from other CI to GitHub Actions. So and I'm using them as an example to see what you can actually do with GitHub Actions. The first one is app intro. By the way, we released version 6 a couple of weeks ago. So I invite you to take a look. And here we're going to see what the GitHub action of app intro is actually doing. It's just a library to create like an introduction for your Android app. So it's pretty straightforward. It's really similar to the code that I was showing you before. And it just like checks out the repo, and then it will run 3 tasks. So just kt-lint, detect, and then run all the tests. That's it. This is a pretty big library, but that's the CI that we want, and it's enough because it just like runs the static analyzers and all the tests, and we are fine. So let's see another library that I also converted to GitHub Actions, and it's Detect. Detect is a bit more famous. It's like a static analyzer for Kotlin, and obviously the CI is also a little bit more complicated. So let's see the GitHub action over there. And there are a couple of things that are interesting to see. So again, there is another job. It's called Gradle, and inside there is a if. So with if, you can define a condition that will skip the GitHub action if it's true. So in this case, what do we have? Seems complicated, but it's actually not. It says like, if not contains GitHub event add commit message, CI skip. So this GitHub action will run if the commit message doesn't contain CI skip. CI skip is something that you can put in a commit message to say like, hey, I'm editing the README. I don't need to run the entire detect CI because this will take 20 minutes. So just like skip it and I can merge my PR. This can be handy sometimes. And then here there is another feature in this GitHub action that is really powerful. It is a strategy with a matrix. So inside the matrix here, we have 2 keys. One is OS and one is JDK. OS has Ubuntu latest, macOS latest, and Windows latest, and JDK is 8, 11, 13. So this will create a CI matrix that is basically a matrix that contains all the possible combination of those 2 values. So I will have like Ubuntu latest on 8, 11, 13, macOS latest on 8, 11, 13, and so on. This allows me to test all the possible combination of those 2 values, and I have those values available later in the GitHub action to configure my action. So for example, I can say that runs on will run on matrix.os. That is the value that this key will have in the instance of the matrix. Or I can define some environment variable. For example, I can have a JDK version environment variable, and I can set it as matrix.jdk, so the value of this key. And I can have a more complex variable that is compile test snippet. So on detect, we want to compile the test snippet only on Linux and on JDK 8, just to speed up the things. And then the rest is really similar. Like you check out the repo. Here we use another first-party action that is setup Java. You see it's called actions/setup Java, and we want the Java version. So this allows us to have like the JDK set it up at the level that we want. And if you try to open a pull request against detect, like you start to make changes, you create a new rule, I don't know, you will see that you have a lot of pre-merge checks runs And they here, like in the job description, you see that you have like Ubuntu latest 11, Ubuntu latest 13, macOS latest 8, whatever. So this gives us the confidence that the detect code will run correctly, like on all the version of Java and on every operating system. Let's look at the last GitHub action that I have to share, and is more like on the continuous delivery side. So previously we saw a lot of continuous integration. Now let's move a little bit more on the delivery. So it's called release to Play Store, and it will run only on push to the branch called release. What do we do? So again, we do the checkout, and then we want to build like an app bundle. On Android, we can build it with Gradle W bundle release. So this will create an app bundle for us to use. And then we need to do 2 steps. First, we need to sign it, and then we need to upload it to the Play Store. Let's see how we do it. Signing. So we use a third-party action. There is this one, roadkill sign Android release v1. Oh, sorry. And here in the with, we have like a lot of extra keys that we can provide. For example, we can say where is the release directory and the alias and the key store and the password and whatsoever. So please note that here, this is another feature of GitHub Actions, secrets. So there are some values like the key store password that you don't want to store inside the repo because you don't want everyone to have access to them. So inside the settings of your repo, like on GitHub inside the settings, you can create new secrets. Like you give them a name and a value, and they will be available to your actions to use. So you don't have like to encode craziness, just like you just copy the string over there and they will be available. And then once you signed, you can actually upload this release to the Play Store. Again, we use another third-party action, this one, roadkill upload Google Play, version 104. And here we have other properties that we can set. For example, where is the release file and on which track we want to upload, like on beta, on alpha, on the internal track, whatsoever. And that's it. Like this is a really easy file. It's, I don't know, 40 lines of code, and it's easy to understand, and it just lives inside the GitHub repo, and this allows you to get your app straight to the Play Store. And that's it. It's really easy. Like, make sure you have such setup, at least the continuous integration and also the continuous delivery, because this will save you a lot of time. So now I still have some minutes, and I want to show you how fast it is to set up a GitHub action for one of your repo. So let's close Keynote, and now let's go here. So I'm on this repository. It's on GDG Pisa. By the way, ciao GDG Pisa. That's the GDG where I'm like one of the remote organizer in Italy. And we have this repo. It's called GitHub Action Sample. And we're gonna use these to set up some GitHub actions. You can check it out. It's open source on GitHub. Let's check the README. So this is a really stupid Android app. It does nothing. Like it's basically an hello world. And there is Android app inside the app folder. So if we go here, we can see that there is a source, main here, and there is a main activity. And that's it. There is no other code, basically. I actually use a template, Kotlin Android template. So you can find all the material here if you're interested. But I actually removed the GitHub Actions from the template because we are going to set it up right now. So how do we start? As I said before, we start from this Actions button over here. So we click it here. And here we have the landing page of GitHub Actions. It says, like, hey, get started. So GitHub realizes that we have a Kotlin repo. But unfortunately for Kotlin, there is nothing really made out of the box. So they suggest us this simple workflow, but the simple workflow is just printing a hello world. So it's not really building. But as a side note, if you would like, unfortunately, GitHub Actions is a little bit more integrated for other languages or deployment. So for example, if GitHub will realize that you have Python code or Rust code, will suggest you some of these examples. They are actually a good starting point. But the one for Kotlin, we can write it ourselves. It's not that complicated. I just wanted to say that below over here, there are some other examples of other GitHub actions. They're not necessarily building, but they're still useful for your ecosystem, specifically if you're doing a lot of open source. So the first one is like a greeting for the first time contributors to your repo. So it will send them like a message like, hey, welcome to App Intro. Like if this is your first pull request, please make sure you do this and that. Labeler is a more structured GitHub action and allows you, for example, to have a specific label based on the file that you change or whatever. And stale is doing something similar to what I mentioned before. This will check for stale issues and pull requests and will either close it or label them as you wish. But now we start with the simple one. So we click on set up this workflow. So this will create, you see, like a new file, blank.yaml inside the .github workflows folder. And we're going to use this to build. So we're going to call it build.yaml. And here we have like an editor. So on the left, it's a YAML file that we can edit. And on the right, we have this access to the marketplace. And here we can find other GitHub actions that we can just use. So when you create here, this is actually, it contains a lot of comments. So it's also easy to work through. But you can also work through while I do it. So we give it a name, we call it build. So this will run on push to branch master and on all pull requests open against master. So we can actually say here that we want it opening on against pull requests on all the branches. And then it contains a job that is called build. We call it Gradle because I like it to call it Gradle, but you can call it as you wish. Here you can do whatsoever. Everything will be fine. We run on Linux. We do the checkout. And then we actually want to run something. So we go here. Instead of running a one-line script, we run all the tests, all the checks. Yeah. And then what do? Instead of running an echo, we just do this. Gradle. So on Gradle, there is this task that will run basically all the verification tasks. Then this we don't need it, so we can remove it. So here you have a little bit of autocompletion. So if you go here and you start typing, like you see, it gives you suggestions on valid keys. So for example, here there was no name, and we can say like check out the repo. So this is like a nice tool to start like learning it. Now it's time to commit it. So we create a new branch and we call it setup build, and then setup build CI. This will start a new pull request. I don't have much time to write this, so just set up the build CI, and then we create it. Fantastic. So GitHub is smart here, and it realizes that I'm adding a workflow file. So here you see it magically appeared, and it queued this job called Gradle on pull request. And now if we click on details, now we will see that it's actually doing stuff. So unfortunately, doing a talk on CI imposes a lot of active waiting. So I will not let you wait till this gets green, and I will start a new action. So I go to actions, new workflow, and I want to show you another that is really cool, that I find it really useful, and it's called Rebase. So if you go on the marketplace and search for Rebase, this one is it's really useful. It's called automatic rebase, and it automatically rebases PR on /rebase comment. So this is from Zero's action, so it's not from GitHub. And in this case, I also suggest that you check the marketplace listing, because sometimes it contains, it's like a little README. It contains like GIFs, and sometimes they also contain like this. This is like a full workflow that you can just copy and use. So we're just gonna work through this super quickly. So this is triggered on issue comment. This is a bit confusing, but this is basically going to fire every time that there is a new comment to either a pull request or an issue when it's created. And it's called automatic rebase, and as a if, and it runs only if the event issue is pull request and in the body of the comment contains /rebase. And what it does, will check out the repo and will run this rebase action. So I'm running out of time, but we should be able to finish. Create this pull request. I create a new pull request. So in this case, this pull request contains a workflow file, but the trigger was not on new pull request, so nothing will happen over here. I can just merge it. So I can do merge. Fantastic. So now, while I wait for the other one to be green, I will show you one last action. There is the one, it's a little bit more on the release side, okay? So let's set up a new workflow and let's call it release. Name, release. Really similar to before. This time, I don't want to run on every pull request. I just want to run on push. Ideally here, I could say like push to branch release, but I will need to create a new branch. So it's now I don't have much time. Let's say that whenever I push to master, I want to have like an APK. Like I want to have an APK of the current status of master. So what I do, let's call it Gradle, run on Ubuntu latest. I do the checkout. And here I do build the APK. So I have Gradle assemble release. This will create a release APK, and then now I need to like make it available. So to make it available, there is one action that is called upload. Yeah, this one, upload a build artifact. It's by actions. So this is from GitHub. So if you click here, you see it's from actions. This is one of the official one. And we just, we can actually copy it. So I go here and paste it. I need to fix the indentation. So the APK, so we have a name for the APK. So this is like release, I don't know, up release APK, and then we have a path. So the path is where the APK will go. Should end up. If you don't know it, I have it in the README, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, assemble release. The APK will be available in this folder. So up builds, build outputs, APK release, up release, unsigned APK. Fantastic. So these are not needed. I put it here. And then I also create a pull request for this. Set up release. This new pull request. Okay, so in the meanwhile, I think the other, yeah, it's green. Setup build CI, it's green. It tells us that the check passed. So if I press here, I see that there is a build Gradle. I can actually press on the details and see that all the steps are actually green, and I have the access to the log over here. And now I can merge my pull request. And that's it. So this one over here, so this allows me, since this was opened before I merged the other, this allows me to show you how the /rebase work. So if I comment with /rebase, this will take some seconds now, generally 30 seconds. But what will happen is that a new GitHub action is triggered right now, the automatic rebase. This will realize that the body of the comment is actually /rebase. And we'll do the checkout, we'll do the rebase, and then at a certain point, you will see that the GitHub Actions bot will force push my branch and will do a rebase for me. Here we go. GitHub Actions bot first pushed whatsoever. So then I can merge it. So now that I merged this, if I go on actions, I have the 3 actions, so build, automatic rebase, and release. And now I have a release, and this started. So this will take 3 minutes. So I'm out of time. We can't wait 3 minutes to see what it does, but I have another repo that with the same setup. There is a private one. And you will find the APK here inside the artifact. So you will have access to it, and you can download it. And with these, I'm basically done. I should be on time, hopefully. Yeah. Nice. I can't hear you.
Sorry, my bad. I was muted.
That's fine.
Thank you, Nicola, for this brilliant talk.
Awesome.
We have a couple of questions.
Fantastic.
So the first question is, how do you store credentials used in the pipelines?
Yeah. Okay, so that's basically what I mentioned briefly with the secrets. So this generally you have 2 types of credentials. So if a credential is like an access token, there is a pure string. You just copy it inside the secrets. So you go in the settings of your repo, like you press settings, there is a secret tab, and there you can create a new secret. So it wants like a name and a body. If instead is a file, because sometimes you might have a file, like a binary file as a secret, you can base64 encode it and paste it over there, and that will be available. And generally also refer to the documentation of the actions, because some action will tell you, for example, upload to Play Store, the key store needs to be base64 encoded, and you need to do this and that and whatsoever. So yeah, it depends on third-party actions also.
Yeah. So the second question was, where's the documentation for building YAML files?
So yeah, I haven't showed it, but wait, I will just present 1 second again.
Yep.
I don't know if you can present and show my screen. Yeah, so I haven't showed this, but when you create a new action, on the right, you have a documentation tab. And here it contains really super simple documentation on how to start your workflow, but there is a lot of links that if you click on those, they will link you to the official GitHub Actions documentation that, by the way, is really great, and it contains like all the stuff you need. So a lot of keys tells you like, I don't know, where you can actually set up an environment variable and what's the syntax for that. But generally, the documentation is really, really good.
Awesome. I think the last question that we have time for today would be, how can I develop my own GitHub Actions and share with others?
Sure. So there are actually 2 types of GitHub Actions that you can share. So one is the Docker-based. So it's basically a Docker container that will contains a Docker file. There is a special syntax that you need to follow. Or you have another type of custom action that is the Node.js one. So that's more like, for example, if you have actions that need to send a message on Slack, you can actually use that. That will create like a Node environment, and you can like run an HTTP post or whatever you need. So that depends on what exactly you need to do. But generally, GitHub, if you follow the structure on how you need to set up your GitHub Actions, you will see that your repository gets highlighted by GitHub, and it says like, this repo contains a custom action. Press here to use it. So yeah, there is a special syntax that now I don't really remember exactly, but yeah, you can find all the documentation online also.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicola, for that amazing talk. Let's just add one back. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. It was a really, really cool talk, Nicola.
Awesome.
Really, really interesting.
Thank you very much for organizing.
Thank you.
For having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. A pleasure for us as well. Thank you. So our next speaker, the next session is starting at 5:30 in 5 minutes. It will be Paul Ruiz, developer, program engineer at Firebase, with his talk, Rapid Prototyping with Flutter and Firebase. So see you in 5 minutes. Hi, it's time to start our second session with Paul Ruiz. He's working at Firebase, and he's going to talk about rapid prototyping with Flutter and Firebase. It's going to be interesting, I'm sure. Thank you, Paul, to be here.
Hopefully. So hey, everyone. My name is Paul Ruiz, and I'm a developer programs engineer on Firebase at Google. Today we're going to talk about two tools, Flutter and Firebase, and how they can be used for rapid prototyping. I'm actually going to try something a little bit different with this talk, as I have my IDEs and emulators and whatnot all running. So rather than showing you a bunch of code on slides for every component, I'll try to show you that actual code running in a live environment. So we know how that tends to go. So hopefully it'll work out, and if it doesn't, we'll figure something out. So whether it's at a hackathon with only 1 weekend to build something presentable, or you have an idea for an app that you want to test out before really investing in it, a lot of us have been in a situation where we want to quickly build something that gets the job done. So during the normal prototyping process, you plan out what the app should do and how it should function, research the feasibility of the idea, map out your architecture, pick your tools, and then build a clean and organized prototype, right? Just kind of curious to see if anyone says anything or not, because I definitely don't. So when building out a quick prototype, most of us just want to open up an IDE and start coding, and then we'll kind of figure it out as we go along. Given this, I'm going to talk about the two tools I mentioned earlier, Flutter and Firebase. Both of these are easy to use and address different development problems. Flutter is for client-side development, and Firebase is for the backend. So while I'm not going to do a deep dive into either of these, what I hope to do is at least help you leave with the vocabulary to look into both of these tools a little bit further when you're ready to use them. So first, let's talk about Flutter. It's an UI toolkit that uses the Dart programming language for building native apps for multiple platforms on top of C++ using a 2D engine called Skia, which is the same graphical engine used by Chrome, Android, and a few other platforms, all coming from a single SDK. Since everything is built from a single code base, you can create your prototypes for multiple systems, such as Android or iOS, without requiring dedicated developers for each. So aside from Flutter being cross-platform, you're probably wondering why you should use it for rapid prototyping, especially since there's other tools that exist that do similar things. So like most development decisions, the answer is kind of, it depends. While Flutter isn't the only tool that can work cross-platform, it is designed from the ground up specifically for creating apps quickly. It's able to easily tie into device hardware using plugins and packages that can be imported into your project, and uses widgets, which we'll dig into a little bit more coming up in a couple slides, to create UI components programmatically rather than requiring something like a layout file or a storyboard. There's also another feature that I actually really like out of Flutter for prototyping, which is the hot reload. So as you change different UI elements and whatnot, it'll actually be available without having to completely reinstall your app. So it just makes it really quick to change little colors and whatnot in your apps. So following up on the it depends answer, there's also going to be times when Flutter isn't the right solution for you. So it's kind of better to figure that out early in the development process. So while games are a lot of fun to develop, Flutter just isn't really at the point where it's good for making games quickly, at least enough to call it a rapid prototype, just because you need to write a lot of the components from scratch that other platforms will give you currently out of the box. Additionally, calling native APIs directly just isn't as much of a thing. Normally, you would write native Swift or Kotlin code and use platform channels to communicate back and forth to the native level through a bridging process. And while it isn't necessarily a deal breaker, it is just something else to be aware of just because it does take a little bit more work. The next thing to consider is audio support and kind of the lack thereof. So while audio isn't supported by native widgets, there are third-party plugins out there that can provide this functionality. Which kind of brings me to the next point. While there's a ton of plugins for Flutter, some third-party libraries that developers have grown to love, like Lodi for animations. Have you ever played with that on Android? And I don't know if they have an iOS version or not. They might. They kind of aren't there right now because people haven't made them yet. So you have to weigh the necessity of things like that versus working with what Flutter does currently have available before deciding to use the tool. And then finally, there's support for additional form factors like watches, televisions, and cars. So right now, Flutter has very limited support for Android, or it's not Android Wear anymore, wow, Wear OS, but no support for platforms like tvOS. So like we talked about already, one of the big draws of Flutter for rapid prototyping is that it's an easy-to-use tool for creating custom UIs. Over the next few slides, I want to give a brief overview of how Flutter can be used to build simple UIs, and then go into where you can learn more about what Flutter has available. So the first thing I want to touch on is how Flutter can be used on multiple platforms. We've all seen apps made with multi-platform tools, but they just don't quite look right compared to the system standard UI, like apps on Android that look like they were completely designed for iOS. What makes Flutter handy here is that it's able to tell what platform it's on, so you can apply the proper UI elements from your app based on the OS. So you can actually see here an example. We have the same exact app running on iOS and Android. And actually, I'll pull that up here as well for funsies. I actually have that same app running on 2 different emulators as well, which we'll get into a little bit more as we go in through this presentation. But yeah, they look respective to their platforms. Which brings me to my next concept. So while we're working with Flutter, everything is a widget, and all UI is described by widgets in a tree structure. So you can kind of think of them like Lego bricks, where you just connect them together to build whatever you want. So while there's hundreds of widgets, I want to go over just kind of a few of them at a high level to give you an idea of the fundamental parts of this fundamental part of Flutter. So as a lot of you know, you can't really start out with anything in software without going through Hello World, right? So all Flutter apps use the main function as their entry point, and in there you can initialize various components and start your application. You can also see a center widget here in this example. I don't know if you're able to see my mouse or not. Let me pull up the little pointer. There we go. So you can see the center widget, and basically all that's going to do is center whatever content is within it into the middle of the screen. And then you have a text widget, which you can kind of guess it displays text. So nothing too fancy there. So the next component that I want to talk about is the list, since honestly most apps are essentially just list and detail screens. As you can see here in the demo image, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with a list, such as swiping to show available actions. But to keep everything simple for the example, we'll just take a look at the code for a basic list of items. So the first widget here is the scroll bar. While it's not necessary, it does provide, as you probably guessed, the scroll bar that would come up on the side so users can tell where they are within a list. After that is the actual list view. And what that contains is another children property, which you can then just pass a data object list to display the content within that list. And honestly, it seems too easy to be true a little bit. At least that's kind of the impression I got when I started messing with this. So what I ended up doing here, just to kind of show you, is I actually have that code pulled up and whatnot. So you can see we have the scroll bar, the list view, and the list. And what that's going to show you is really just this actual list here that's on the screen. So these list tiles themselves are themselves widgets, which are made up of just text views and whatnot. They're going to be created by this build list tile. You don't really have to worry about this. This is all related to different properties that could be done with this list. So we can actually set up 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, show avatar, all kinds of other stuff. But for the most simple version, all we're going to have is this title that says this item represents whichever item is coming out of the data structure list. And then that's just, again, a data structure list. So we have A through N. And if we actually wanted to come through here and just say 2 and 3, we'll go ahead and save that. I'm going to back out. We don't have to completely recompile the app, but I do need to reopen that screen. Oh, maybe. Oh, it's still reloading. Hopefully that goes quickly. As you know, tech, it never actually wants to work with you when you need it to. Yeah, that's cool. We don't need to spend forever on that. So I'm going to go ahead and come back to the presentation. Which brings me to the next widget, which is going to be cards. So since they're more often than not the widget that's going to go into your list view, I figure they're kind of worthwhile to go over. So the first component in this is, let's see, the size box, which is basically assigning a predefined height to each of the cards that are kind of displayed right here inside of the list. And that size box will wrap a child card widget, which sets some general properties for the card, like the shape and basic behavior. And the next is the child of that child, which in this case is the inkwell. The inkwell is kind of an interesting widget as it's what the card uses to figure out interactive tap areas. And then finally, that inkwell has its own child, which is the actual content of the card that the user sees. So at this point, you should be seeing a pattern of widgets forming hierarchical trees in Flutter, which is pretty important for understanding how the platform works. Oh, and sorry, I just saw a question here. Do you need an Apple device to build the iOS version? I mean, I'm just using the emulator. I actually don't own an Apple device. And then I do have the GitHub link demo that I'll be giving out at the end of the slides. Okay, so now that we've covered a few of the really common widgets, let's get into some stuff that's a little bit more interesting. So the first thing is that gallery app, which is the GitHub demo that I was just showing you and that was just asked for. So I'm just going to dive into it instead of talking about it too terribly much that way. So this is the same thing that I'm running on iOS and Android. Oh, that's why it failed on me earlier, is because I was trying to install iOS. I messed up my environment. That's cool. So what this has is just a whole bunch of collections of different UI items and other things that you might want to use in your apps. So if you're trying to do a rapid prototype and you decide, hey, I want to have pull to refresh, you can just go ahead and grab the code from that, which is all on GitHub and this demo app, and just throw it into your apps when you're trying to throw something together, just to kind of make it work out the way you'd want. Same with search and all kinds of other stuff, how to use the drawer. Let me pull up the code for this as well. So again, let's pull this one up here. If you wanted to see tab scrolling, so we've got the scrollable tabs. If you wanted to use something like this, you can actually see the code for that inside of the actual stuff that you would pull from GitHub. Let's see, we've got, there's a red thing, the red accent. So we've got that. You see this checkbox is kind of red. Let's go ahead and just make that green. We'll save. I'm actually going to reinstall it onto this device, and we'll try to see how this works with the hot reloading. It's because it's kind of a fun thing to show off. And then while we're doing that, I'll show you the iOS version here. So it does have the Cupertino styles and whatnot. So you can see that this actually looks like an iOS device on the iOS emulator. Somebody did ask about iOS emulators on Windows. I don't think that's how that works, because Apple. So you will need a Mac, I'm pretty sure, for that. Oh, increase in the font size? Let's see. If I can remember how to do that, that's a good call. So I actually don't remember the command to do that. If anyone happens to know it and wants to post in the live chat, I can bump up the emulator though. Oh, and then actually another thing that's really cool here, let me come back to this. We'll go back down to our scrollable tabs. We've got our green part. We can switch this back to red. Save that, and it should just auto change. Yep, without having to actually reload the app once everything is actually synced up and ready to go. So yeah, the other thing I want to talk about too is inside of that gallery app, they have these case studies. So say you wanted to just kind of throw together a shopping cart app. Here's a basic login screen. It's not actually tied into anything yet. We'll talk about that when we talk about Firebase. But there's just nice little samples here that you can kind of take for your rapid prototypes without having to redesign all of this from scratch. So say you want to add a couple items, throws it into a cart. That cart becomes available on an additional screen. You still get the really nice animation flows with it as well. Let's see. And then we will jump back here. Fortnightly is just kind of your standard detail screen of what you would expect from like a news article app. And then Pesto is your standard list and detail screen. So you can have a lot of the pretty common functionality that you would throw into an app if you're just trying to throw something together quickly. All right, so I'm going to skip that slide because we just talked about that. The other thing I was going to talk about is the Flutter cookbook. So similar to the gallery app, oops, that's okay. There is a cookbook from Flutter. So say you just had a couple things that you wanted to throw together real quick. You didn't want to search the web for blog posts and whatever else. It may already exist here. So let's say you wanted to take a picture using the camera. You can actually just find the camera in the cookbook, and they'll give you full sample app and code and whatnot to be able to use that functionality that you can just throw into your application. I think there's also like networking and some other pretty interesting things that are just common tasks for developers that you would want to throw into something or into an app. So it brings me over to third-party libraries. So while I mentioned earlier, a lot of the regular libraries that developers are used to using aren't always going to be available. So there's still a ton out there to help you quickly build your apps with complex features. So I actually really love maps in general, so I figured I would talk about this one a little bit. So here we actually have Google Maps, great little plugin, super easy to use as well. So I brought that one up as well. And that one's actually, as you can see, not very much code to get the functionality that we had just in this little maps GIF, where you just start up your map, you initialize all of your markers and your circles, which is what you'll see as we zoom in on this marker here, and then add some tappable actions and whatnot, and it's relatively straightforward. As long as you initialize everything from your data before the map is loaded, it just gets thrown in there, and it's pretty quick and easy to use for showing any kind of location-based information for your users. And then in addition to that, there's the Flutter Flare library, which is a third-party library that I thought was just kind of too cool to not include in this talk. So using their website, you can stage out animations that will then get converted into vector animation files that can be run in your app. This is great when you want to animate icons, buttons, or other items in your app to add some extra kick to your UI, which is always great when you're trying to sell an idea to someone or show off for hackathon judges. So overall, it took me roughly 20 minutes of a tutorial on YouTube to learn how to make this initial animation. And once you know how to do one, it's super easy to actually do more of them. And the code for that, also super, super easy, which I really appreciated. What'll happen is when you generate the animation on their site, it'll kick off a vector file, and it's called FLR. It's just a JSON format here. And it has this little animation. I just called mine Go. But inside of your app, you just have to include a Flare actor, provide it the file, and then tell it, hey, I want to start this animation, and it'll either run it once if that's what you've set it for, or keep running it on loop, which is what I've done in this application. Oh, to increase font size, thank you. Let me get that going here. Double shift, font. Okay, is that better for folks? Bring that up one more time. Okay, if that doesn't work, let me know and I can try to bump it up again. So for the second half of this talk, I want to go over what Firebase is and how to use it for Flutter using the Firebase plugin. So first off, I'm going to give the official pitch for Firebase, then we can actually dig into Flutterfire stuff. So Firebase is an application development platform with a mission to help app developers succeed with their products. Firebase accomplishes this by taking common problems that occur during a product's lifecycle and making them easier to solve, be it by providing more information about your products or providing tools to handle complex problems like security and network connectivity when storing data. Firebase is divided into 3 main categories of tools with specific goals: helping you build better apps by making complex coding processes easier, improving app quality by helping you catch issues early and fixing them quickly, and helping you grow your app by understanding how other people are using it and engaging with them in a meaningful way. So as you can see, there's actually like 20 products here. So I'm just going to talk about a subset of them that are most relevant to rapid prototyping and development when you don't care about growing your audience quite yet and some of the other tools that are available. So the first feature I want to go over is authentication. So while it's not the most flashy of features, there's always that one hackathon judge that asks you about security, so you might as well toss it in since it's pretty easy to use. This will allow your user to log in with your app using a username and password, a phone number, or a third-party identity provider like Google or Facebook. So I actually have authentication already kind of brought up here in the Firebase console. I've enabled the password and email sign-in providers, but I don't have any users logged in yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over to the side. Of course, my little stuff stopped working. Oh, it's okay. Let me just do this. Usually I can just drag in and it'll work. So I'm going to bring up Flutterfire, authentication. So I'm going to try first creating an email and password for a user. So let's say demo@gmail.com. The most secure password ever. Now we register that. Let's see here. Let me refresh. And let's see. So now we can see that this user has actually been created, which is kind of cool. And we would just be able to log in using this username and password. If I also wanted, what I can do is test signing in. And And I'm just going to go ahead and use the Google sign-in provider, which is also provided through, oops. Okay, so I've already signed in, so it didn't give me the prompt of, hey, make sure you log in and all that good stuff before. But what it did do is it created this user. It overrode the username and password version of it, just because the Google provider is a little bit more trusted than just a standard username and password. And then if we want to look at the code for that, let's see here. Let's see. Increase font size. Where did it go? Okay, let's see. Page. So the sign in with Google is here. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to create this Google sign-in account object, which is going to be the Google user. You're going to grab their credentials once the user is actually signed in, and all of this is kind of handled in the back of everything. And then with that, you'll be able to actually grab your Firebase user, which will then let you make sure that this user is authenticated and able to access their data through security rules and other things as they come along. All right. And it looks like I'm eating up way too much time, so I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can here. Sorry about that, but those are question section later where I can do more demos as well. So the first feature I want to go, oops, make sure I'm on the next slide. The next I want to talk about are the two database options available in Firebase. The first one, called Firestore, is a database tool that allows you to group data using a document collection structure for straightforward access. This data is stored and synced between users and devices, plus it supports basic queries in addition to direct data access. The goal of Cloud Firestore is to provide a back-end data storage solution without having to go through the tedious process of setting up your own database server, authentication schema, REST endpoints, and everything else that goes along with building a typical database infrastructure. The second option, Real-Time Database, uses simple JSON tree structure to store and access data. While more lightweight than the Cloud Firestore, it still offers many of the advantages, such as real-time syncing, offline support, and scalability. Additionally, Firebase Real-Time Database supports the ability to know when users are connected to the database and can be used in conjunction with Cloud Firestore, as each of these serves its own unique purposes within your apps. A lot of the times I'll get questions like, what's the difference between Firestore and Real-Time Database? A lot of this is going to deal with the amount of users that can be connected at once, and just kind of throughput, different cost options, and some other things of that sort. If we have questions on that later, I can actually pull up the documentation on that as well for people. And then let's go ahead and see. I can actually just pull up some of this too if people wanted to see. And I actually kind of like the real-time database example a little bit more. So you can see we don't have any data in here yet. It says button tap 0 times. I'm going to just go ahead and add some of that here. And I had a, looks like I might have a bug. This was working yesterday, but what can you do? Let's try the Firestore version of this. So those did work. So that actually sent data through, and that should appear in our database. Yep. We can also do transactions, so essentially making sure that a lot of people aren't overwriting the same data as they're working with it. And you can do batch writes, where you can just send a lot of data out at once. And all of this is going to update pretty quickly in live, so you can see as we delete things, it'll show up and disappear in the database there. And I can go into the code later here if people are interested. So I don't know about the Firebase UI library, but I think a lot of the concepts that were in the Firebase UI library got brought into the Firebase SDK. So good question though. So sometimes you need to store and serve user-generated content, such as images and audio files, directly in your mobile app. You can do this using cloud storage. So uploads and downloads are handled by the Cloud Storage SDK and are resumable, making them more resilient to changes in network connectivity. When a user's connection is disrupted during an upload, the SDK will automatically handle retrying and resuming, which can be critical when dealing with the kind of network conditions often encountered on mobile devices. Downloading content uses a similar robust system, allowing users to receive their data once the connection is successfully established. So once the user's content is uploaded, it can be shared with other users in your app using the same SDK. And since you will most likely run into situations where only certain users will be able to see or upload where only certain users should be able to see or upload specific content, you can use Firebase security rule system along with Firebase authentication to restrict content according to your app's requirements. Then there's cloud functions for Firebase, which are single-purpose functions that are executed in a secure and managed environment within your Firebase project. They're powerful tools that let you handle complex logical operations within Firebase, such as performing operations on your Firebase database or interacting with various other Google or external services. Essentially, they're just great for any kind of back-end logic that you need to put into your applications. So I actually have this one in this little demo here that all it's doing, let's see where it is, my text. As soon as a message is sent from the app to my little backend function, it's just going to return hello from Firebase and a timestamp, and that'll be displayed in the app. So it's just where you'd put in general logic when you need to have it. So the final thing I want to talk about is MLKit, which allows developers to enhance their app's user experience by applying machine learning. MLKit provides a variety of tools that can run on a device, in the cloud, or both. MLKit models fall into two categories, vision and natural language processing. Vision models allow developers to scan barcodes, detect faces, label objects and landmarks, or read text. And for simplicity's sake, I have examples that are pretty much around the vision aspect, just because I think it's a little bit more interesting and easier to use in my case here. So you can see in the GIF here, what I'm doing is just kind of pulling pictures, putting it on the screen, and then running the algorithm on it. So this one's detecting text. This one, next one, I believe detects faces. Oh no, so this actually did the labeling. So you see crowd, glasses, hat, some other stuff. And then we detect faces, which will then just kind of highlight different faces that the algorithm is able to detect within the image. And I can do a live demo of that one too if people are interested, which I think I have a couple minutes, so why not? I actually think this one's really cool too. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this, pull up a picture. So let's say we wanted to grab the labels on here. This is just a picture of one of my chickens and one of my cats looking at each other through the door. So we'll detect labels, and this should say, yep, so it detects the chair that's in the background, it detects the cat, detects the bird, all of them with over 70% confidence. And they're super easy to put in here, and it'll run on both iOS and Android. So if you're trying to put together something for a hackathon or just a general quick prototype that you want to throw some machine learning into, it's fairly quick to get this in and running. And I don't know, I think it's always pretty impressive to see that this actually works on a mobile device. So it's a nice thing to throw in there. So yeah, to kind of wrap up, a whole bunch of different resources. So the gallery app, let's see. Let me go ahead and pull up that on GitHub because I actually didn't put this in here. Yep, so it's this github.com Flutter and Gallery, since somebody was asking for that. That's where you're going to be able to find, let's see, is this the exact one? This may not be. Let's see. There's so many different gallery things, which is always kind of a pain. Oh, okay. Oh, you would be able to find it through the site too, I believe. So the gallery flutter.dev, all of that will exist. But they also have code labs, they have the cookbook. Firebase and Flutter are both on Twitter, so you can keep up with news going on there, as well as YouTube. We have our basic websites. And then Firebase for Flutter is going to be all through this Flutterfire plugin, which you can get at github.com, Firebase Extended, and Flutterfire. And then, yeah, that's pretty much what I have for you today. We are at time, which is great. My name is Paul. Again, I am a engineer for developer relations. I basically work on sample apps. There's my email if people have questions that they want to ask not in this chat, just in case you come up with anything later and I'm not here anymore. So yeah, I guess that is it for this, if there's questions.
Awesome. Hi, Paul. Thank you for that amazing talk. We have a couple of questions. The first one being, is there security features for Firestore?
Yeah, so there are security rules. So I can actually bring that up. Are you able to see my screen still or no?
Oh, yeah. Let me switch to it. Yep.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, so this is just in Firestore here. We actually have rules that you would be able to use. So for mine right now, yeah, so this is just allows anyone to read and write it without any kind of authentication to my actual database right here, as long as it's before June 12th. We can also see the same thing in the real-time database, where this one is just saying, hey, anyone can read and write it right now. And then if you set these to false, then the user has to be logged in and authenticated against Firebase in order to access these databases. I can make the slides available too as well. I just saw that come through. I have no problem doing that. So if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm the DevParty people have linked me a couple times. I'll go ahead and post them there just so people can find them.
Awesome. Another question we got is, how would you separate the logic from the user interface in Flutter?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean. So the logic itself, it's all going to be done here within Dart. You can also have additional files too if you don't want to have it just in the one main like UI file. And I think you can reference additional Dart files that way. It's fairly object oriented.
Okay, awesome. And what's the pricing for Firebase?
That's a good question. It depends on how much you are using it. So I'll pull this up. There's a free tier, which gives you actually a pretty good amount of availability and whatnot. It's called the Spark plan. I've actually, with my personal projects and hackathon projects and whatnot, have never gone past the free tier. But then we also have pay-as-you-go. Every different thing that you do is going to have a different quota applied to it. So under the free plan authentication is going to be like 10,000 uses a month, or hosting is going to give you 10 gigs a month for free. It just really depends on what you're doing with it.
Awesome. If anyone else has any other questions, they can get directly in touch with Paul. Thank you for your time. It was great having you. So cool. I've added Antoine to the stream. Yeah.
Yeah, so next at 6:15, we are going to have Stacy Devino. She's working at Nike, and to do a talk about Exoplayer to the rescue. It's going to be great. See you then.
Cool. See you.
How is everyone?
Yeah. Hello, Stacy. And it's time for our last session of the day with Stacy Devino. She's working at Nike, and we are really happy to have her at our event. So she's going to do a talk with a great pun, Exoplayer to the rescue. Thank you, Stacy.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful Saturday. And I wanted to start this talk about Exoplayer because I think it's pretty darn awesome. And quite frankly, it's what all the cool kids say to use, right? When it comes to our rich media, there are a few different options that we'll go over here, as well as the advantages and disadvantages of all of them. And then potentially, how do we even do this in a much more simplified manner and get kind of Graham-like effects as well, so that we can enhance our mobile experiences. But truthfully, this may not just be Exoplayer to the rescue. This is, in fact, simple Exoplayer to the rescue. And the truth of the matter is, rich media isn't actually hard. So it's a secret. Shh. So we're going to go over the three main video player types that you can use in Android, including one of them being Exoplayer. And what I want to outline here is it's really about how much you care and how much you care about the experience that your customers are getting. This is what I call the I put no work into this version of what you can do. And that is video intent. And what is a video intent? Basically, it's just an intent with a URL and just an intent parameter that says that it is video and sends it out, and anything can capture it and anything can play it. So what are some advantages of that? It's dead simple. Like I just said, you could basically write it in a single line of code. All right. There's no risk, right? So if you send out this intent, anything can pick it up, and it's not going to crash your app. So if it's an invalid data type or any of those kinds of things, or if there's actually just a video player problem on the device itself, which there can be depending on hardware or software rendering, and whether or not it's handled effectively by the internal player, or it's just a player type that the video encoded codec doesn't match. There's no risk to your app, right? So what are some disadvantages? I'm going to go ahead and say there's probably way more than there are advantages, right? Engagement. Every single time that you take a user out of your app, they are outside of your experience. It is something that is beyond your control. And yes, you can set up the intent so that it claims ownership and sets as soon as you hit the back button to come back to your application. But that isn't necessarily a great way to handle a user experience because you don't know what video player it's going to send it to. And even in those cases, the video player itself can actually override a lot of the things that you sent for the back handling. It's all dependent on how it's actually implemented on the video player of their choice. Metrics. Do you know how long they watched the video? Did they watch the video to completion? Did they repeat multiple parts of the video that they may have found pretty interesting? You don't know. You have no idea. You only know when they left your app and when they come back. And trying to measure all that, that's finagly. That's weird logic. You don't want to be doing that. So effectively, you've lost metrics. And you don't control, right? So since you are sending them out, you've not only lost the engagement, but you lost control. You don't have media controls. You don't have any kind of iconography. You don't have any kind of branding. And it's highly dependent on what the user has installed. So if the user doesn't have a video player that can handle the type of video that you sent, maybe it's some sort of specially encoded HLS stream, or it's a dash video, a lot of players don't immediately handle that, especially system players. So you're kind of just messed up, right? All right. So this is the basic version. And it's one step up from the video tent, in my opinion, which is Video View. Video View is a class that's already in Android, and it's basically just allowing you to tap into the system video player and actually use what's already installed on the system to do so. You just assign the video view just like you would any other type of frame view or image view, that kind of thing, and set up its parameters and send it a video. And we'll go through this in code in a moment, but it's pretty simplified. But what do you get out of it? So some advantages. There's no libraries. You don't have anything to install. It's already something that's in Android, ready to go. It's got a very limited scope. And by that, I mean, there's not a lot of extra stuff that you would have to do to get this going. It's really simplified. It's meant to be very, very simple. But, you know, there's some things that come with that. And disadvantages. Limited controls. So when it comes to what you can actually set for video view, you can't do a lot of things with kind of weird overlays and whatnot to the extent that you can in Exoplayer. And you don't have kind of automatic controls for various modes and systems that you do in Exoplayer. Like you could automatically use shuffle. You automatically have like different pieced off rewinds or backs, those kinds of things. A lot of playlist handling control. That's already taken care of in Exoplayer that you don't necessarily get in Video View. But if you're talking about something that's very, very simple, this could be to your advantage, especially if you're not necessarily wanting to have any controls. The UI controls are not free. So just starting up a Video View instance, you don't necessarily get them for free. They're not automatically present. So you actually have to go through and assign UI controls. And you can do a little bit of styling there, but it's not something that just is ready to go out of the box. And again, limited styling. You get some colors. You're also somewhat dependent on anything that the manufacturer may have put in terms of styling on Video View, which some device manufacturers actually have done. So you're not even necessarily getting a consistent experience there. You might just be getting coloring. And again, the actual manufactured device could override that. And you really get very limited codec support that you are always guaranteed. So you are not guaranteed support for like AVI and various specialized versions of MP4 that use different like AAC audio codecs. You only get these 3 base types that you're guaranteed. And devices can act differently. You can actually end up with slightly different controls, and not all devices are going to support basically features like progressive quality video. So it could be a situation where you have one device that takes a minute to load a video, whereas the other one takes 3 seconds. And that just has to do with what they actually support out of the box. All right. So Exoplayer, you know the Googlers, they make good stuff. I don't know how familiar you are with the ShamWow commercials from the late 90s, early 2000s, you know, where he's just like, oh, it's made in Germany. Germans make good stuff. Well, in this case, Exoplayer, it's one of those things that you're just kind of going like, oh, wow, I can't believe it does all these things. So Exoplayer 2. We have some advantages. It has huge codec support. Last time I checked, it was over 13 types. And actually, I think in 2.0 2.10 or was it 2.11, they added like another 2 or 3 different codecs that are supported out of the box, plus a ton of other variants, so that you get you can have totally different audio codecs versus what the video is encoded as, and it just plays out of the box, which is amazing. There's even some DRM support in the kind of, I think it's starting in like 2.10. There's some automatic handling of DRM support that is really cool, as well as more recent versions allowing captionings to be a lot easier. But you get audio and video in one. You don't have to do separate things with handling both streams. And you can actually even just use Exoplayer to play audio, which is really cool, because think about all the times that you maybe are using things like YouTube Music, right? And you have it playing in the background, but you're not actually watching the video. And there's no actual video that's playing directly that you see. That's actually using the audio capabilities of Exoplayer. Highly customizable. You can customize anything on Exoplayer, from the size of buffers to the way that it looks, the way that it operates. Everything is customizable. And I'm talking about this from a simple Exoplayer kind of point of view as well. Everything is customizable. You get all kinds of fancy stuff. So especially things like 360 videos, where you're actually creating, or even dome video situations where you're creating an environment that people can actually experience things in a 360 degree or 720 or whatever they call it, the 3-dimensional space, and stereo video, especially for VR. There's actually a VR mode specifically supported starting, I think in 2.10, or was it 2. I'm trying to remember the differences between 2.10 and 2.11, but you automatically have VR and a VR button supported as well. What are some disadvantages with Exoplayer 2? It seems really complicated. Have you actually taken a look at this code? It's gotten much better, but it's trying to show you all the different things that you can do in Exoplayer, and it seems very, very complicated. But I'm here to tell you there's ways that you can make this a lot more simplified, and we'll go into that in a moment, I swear. This is something that's also gotten a lot better, especially over the last year, but there's a number of features that can exist that don't have good examples or documentation. We're trying as community members, especially with talks like these, to help provide that that kind of extra bits, but you know, there's only so far that Java docs can actually get you, especially if you're starting out. And this is one of those things that everybody kind of needs to know how to do, especially because pretty much every app of a certain size is going to have some sort of video componentry in it. And you have to import the library and all the needed pieces, and there are multiple. So you don't want to actually just do the massive import of everything to do with Exoplayer, because you're going to end up with codecs or certain supports that you just don't need or want. So you're going to have to go through and actually look at the library and pick out the, anywhere between 3 to 5 different options that you're going to want to import. So now we get into simple Exoplayer. What are some things about simple Exoplayer in terms of advantages? It's still Exoplayer. So you get everything that Exoplayer can do from a capability standpoint out of the box, ready to go. You get things like audio session and wake lock handled for you automatically. These are actually things that came up much more in recent versions of Android, 9, 10, and 11, that you need to handle things like audio session, especially when you're pulling down so that you don't actually cause conflicts with other playing media. It handles it automatically for you. And wake lock was actually added, I think, in 2.11, so that now anytime you're actually playing a video, it's automatically going to have a wake lock if there's actually video being played, not necessarily, I think, audio. It can kind of handle that for you, and you can, of course, disable it with a very simple just set function, which makes that a lot easier too, because then you don't have to do some of the things that you have to do with regular Exoplayer in kind of handling listening and whatnot. And it's all inclusive. You don't have to do a bunch of frames and handlers and have little extra pieces to handle playlists and all that. It's just kind of ready to go. And as part of that, there's not the kind of traditional additional getters and setters that you would have to do from a listener separate component standpoint. You can just literally set wake lock on. Awesome. Done. What are some disadvantages of simple Exoplayer, especially compared to regular Exoplayer? Heck if I know. I really don't know if there's any kind of disadvantage to starting with simple Exoplayer and simply adding or removing the various features that you might need or want, or even expanding upon with the standard Exoplayer things. So what I would say is it's a no-brainer. There's nothing that you have to really think about. Okay, let's just start with simple Exoplayer and work up from there. And now it's time for code. Woo! Code. I love code. How about y'all? Love code? It's awesome. All right. So what I have here is a very, very simple application that's going to show you the 3 different main types. And then we're going to do some extra fun things with Exoplayer that we get really, really quickly. So let's start with video intent. All right. Love that loading screen, don't we? All right. Woo. Swipe from the top. Oh, no. All right. So you can see we don't really get any controls other than play, pause. And even that doesn't work. So, yep. Loading screens. Woo! And we've taken the user out of the app. But if we hit back, it sends us back to our regular viewing experience, right? And now let's go to what video. Well, let's start with video intent here. So how do we actually do a video intent? If we come to our main activity here, come on, main activity. All right. So what you see here is I've just declared a very, very simple activity with a couple of buttons and intents attached to each of them. And what we have is start video intent. This is it. That's the entire code. Wow, simple. Very, very simple. All we're doing is saying that it's a type video. We're sending the video URI, which is just this parsed video URL. And we're sending an extra flag just to be nice. And we're starting the activity based off of the intent. Simple. So, all right, let's move on to the next one I talked about, which was video view. Wow, that actually worked pretty quickly, especially by comparison with the video intent. But it still had a noticeable black screen, didn't it? Let's hit back on that, and so you can see video view. And whoop. Yeah, so I've actually added these media controls, and I'll show you in just a second, but they don't just come up super easy, in my opinion. And you're kind of stuck with this layout, and I'll show you why in just a moment. So earlier showed that it's just an intent that's going to send you to another activity. So let's take a look at that activity. So this is an advantage of video view. It's really, really simple. This is an activity that's just picking up that URL string and then sending, it's going to set that URI for the video for that video view. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of you don't get it for free. We actually had to set an anchor view, which is the video view, and take a basic media controller. Now you can make a custom version of this, but it's not non-trivial if you want to have additional controls, and it's going to pick up on whatever the theme is that you actually applied to your base layout for that video view is actually using. And we just need to make sure that we are doing things like stopping and starting. It's nothing really complicated here. And if we actually look at the activity that is controlling this, we can see that it's pretty simple too. So all it is just a video view, and we've given it some constraints, and that's it. Nothing else. And we just made the background black, made sure that it's always black. So, all right, now let's get into our final type, which is Exoplayer. So we saw that it actually started up faster, and look at this, the quality is getting progressively better. Wow, that's something that Exoplayer has that we didn't automatically get in the other two. And we're guaranteed it. So this is actually I think this is actually like a 4K video, something along those lines. And you could see that it started out kind of looking a little bit fuzzy, but we immediately launched the user into our experience. So what's some fun things that we can do with Exoplayer? Actually, I'm going to go ahead and take this out real fast because I wanted to show you some fun things. All right, let's see. Let's apply that real fast. Hit our back button. All right. So what were we actually doing in Exoplayer? How did we actually start this up? So we still have to do some things that we're doing just like we did in video view, but you can see that it's not that long. Actually, we're pretty much done by here, and there's some extra that I'm already handling anyway, which is we are actually using an HLS stream. So here, all I'm doing is setting the view, getting the URL, and then we're going to just kind of save the state so that, if it kind of goes back and forth, we can actually keep the state and the position that it's in, which is really, really nice. But here's kind of the important bits, right? So we are going to first just set simple Exoplayer. We need to then put a player here and a URL and all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to just say play when ready. As soon as it's actually loaded and prepared, then we want it to actually play it. I'm going to go ahead and knock that out for a second. And this is actually an extra thing here. Media session connector. This is actually something you need in order to do kind of any little extra things as far as like setting the video into other componentry. It's also just a good idea to have media session connector set up anyway. Are all these components added by default? So when we come to simple Exoplayer, this is already all there. So as soon as we've actually imported that, and I can show you the Gradle as well, but is the font size still too small? I've got it on present mode. Maybe it's okay. Is the font size okay for everyone or no? Maybe still too small. Yeah, it does look a little bit small. Okay. Maybe I can just do a quick adjust of my display to make that a little bit easier for everyone. All right, so we can do, let's go ahead and just make this a 1080p display for, whoa, okay, maybe not. Okay, hey y'all. Whoa. Okay, let's do this. Where are we? All right, and when it comes to this guy, all right, is that much easier for everyone to see? It seems like it is. All right. So what we're actually doing here is we're just declaring a player. This is a little bit different than the way that it was done in 2.9 and earlier. This is something that was new for 2.10, is that now we have a builder system. And that means that you can set all of the different objects instead of having to do it right at the beginning. And we just say that to our player view, that we want our player to be this player. So player view is the name of the actual view itself in the layout file. And we're going to have video URL, which I actually just captured up here. Just be set here. So we're going to take that URL and set it to the single player media. So we're just saying that we're going to play one thing. Now, when it comes to the media session connector, we kind of always want to do this. It's not necessary to get the most simplified instance, but this actually helps a number of other applications as well know that you're actually active. We already got some of those things with the audio session, and what we get here with being able to do kind of like the notification pull down of different media controls, as well as if you want to do picture-in-picture, this is necessary. If you want to see an example of that, I've actually got a picture-in-picture example in my GitHub. And this set single player media, right? So all I've done here is I've set a default data source factory. And then I just say that the agent is this for this application. We're basically setting it and claiming it at the same time so that it knows what we're using. Now, given the data source factory, we want to support a few different types, but actually in this example, I'm only focused on HLS and kind of other being, in this case, downloaded media. I'm not actually going to support smooth streaming and Dash just for the sake of having less code here, but they actually have slightly different ways that you handle the media source. So I do suggest that you actually look at the examples for that. But in this case, all we have to do is just set that data source factory, create the media source, which is just handling that URI from the URL. And then we just hit prepare because we want that to be the actual media itself. And then that basically allows us to then play when ready. So once it's prepared, it will actually start playing. We do need to take into account certain things here, which is since we are starting a media session with a media session connector, we want to make sure that we say false when it's in on stop. We also want to have it do the same when it comes to the player view, because we want to make sure that we are actually setting it each time and we're releasing it each time, especially because we might be getting different URLs coming through. If you actually know what you have, or you're using this in a pure view system, which normally is what I prefer, but here I'm just trying to make sure that everything is on the same kind of level playing ground. Everything's being started with an activity off of an intent so that you really get to know performance. And here we want to make sure that we're doing things like saving where they were in the video. If we get the same video sent to us over the URL, which is what we got, where we can actually, on this device, if we hit Exoplayer and we go here and we hit back, we should actually come back. Oh, no, I guess it didn't save it. Anyway, that's my fault. It was working, I swear, in the on resume. But it's also going to just, oh, wait, not from killing it that way. It's more like if you do this, you go to 7. All right, we're going to hit this and come back, and it should resume, right? So if you are switching tasks, it actually effectively pauses it and handles that for you. So, okay. Let's just say we kind of got this all pretty much, if we account for not having the other things, this is about 100 lines of code, actually a little bit less. And we've handled a ton of things here. We are handling multiple data types and all kinds of instances and different, whether or not it's something that's locally stored or something that's coming from a streaming source. It's super, super easy, right? All right. Let's see if we can get some fanciness going on in here. So one thing that comes up pretty often is playlists. And playlists don't have to be necessarily going from like truly one video to another, but can actually be when you're you have one video that has like multiple parts that have to be loaded up together. One quick way that you can make this happen for you is by having it in a playlist and ready to go. So how do we actually do a playlist? Let's go back to this main activity, and let's go ahead and add a button here. And yeah. All right. So we have an array of streaming links, including this wonderful 4K. Ooh, 4K, all the Ks. Sorry, I don't have any 8K media sources. I just don't. So, all right, if we look at Exoplayer, what's really cool about this is we don't have to do a bunch of extra stuff, honestly, which is pretty amazing. So in order to just start handling these multiple instances, we can use the same activity and we just fire it with a different media source list. So in this case, we're just going to say arg video URL list. We're just going to collect that from the bundle. And here we should be able to handle the playlist by actually, instead of the single media source, and actually you can make this a lot more simplified. I just wanted to show, kind of the full extent because yes, we are copying and pasting code here. But what we are doing here is concatenating media source. So it's a slightly different media source than the default. And we're still using the same default data source factory here. And we're just going to create a playlist based off of that array of strings. The same media stuff that we talked about earlier. So what does that actually look like? Let's hit run and see if that comes up. All right. This is what's nice about having a Stream Deck. All right, so it said install was successful. Let's see. No, that does not look like it was successful. Let's go ahead and hit restart. Come on now. Oh, wait. I messed up. I thought I had this set correctly, but I didn't. You know why? Because I had this set to invisible still. Awesome. All right, so let's hit run now and see what actually pops up on our emulator. All right, cool. So now we have Exoplayer playlist. So what we did there, again, was just to have a playlist associated with it. So it's pretty easy. All right. If we hit playlist, all right, look, now we have the media controls that were already there, now handling a forward and back to a larger extent. They're no longer grayed out, and that happened for us pretty much automatically. So if I just want to skip, I want to go to the next one. Boom, boom. Awesome. We've got our playlist already handled for us. Yay. Woo! That was like no time, right? So, all right, that's kind of cool. But what are some other things that we can maybe do? All right, let's look at our actual Exoplayer and see if there's something we can do here. Like, you know what? I want to take that rewind and I want to actually define it to be a little bit more time. And it's doing it based off of milliseconds. You can actually see that when I hit Exoplayer here and I hit the rewind button, it's not that long. It's like 5 seconds at a time. But maybe I want to make it shorter or longer. So let's see how that actually looks. And this should be finishing in just a moment. Awesome. All right. Pop up, pop up. Let's see how it goes. Did it go? It said, you know, sometimes it doesn't always start it. All right, let's see if it actually took. So let's go further on. Yay, now it's 1 second. How long did that take? No time. All right, that's pretty cool. All right, what's some other stuff that we can do here? You know what? I really want to hide that controller. So that controller that we get automatically, I want to make that a no. Would you like to make that a no? Let's make that a no. So what does that look like? Let's see, let's see, let's see. Come on now. Boom. All right. So now I don't have any controls. I'm clicking. I swear I'm clicking. You can hear it, right? That's actually really convenient if you just want to have like a video playing in the background, because believe it or not, this uses less memory and is a lot more performant than a lot of the like GIF handlers. And I say GIF, it's okay. We can all say whichever way we want. And allows you to do repeats and all those kinds of things. So awesome. That was super easy. All right, let's talk about something that we see on the gram that shall not be named. We're going with just gram now. What's a really cool effect you see on the gram when you're scrolling? It's that full screen video effect, right? Well, there you go. That's it. That's how you do it, in case you were wondering. We can actually declare full screen and make the buttons disappear as well. But it will automatically clip to the center of the screen in the view so that you get that kind of full effect with whatever video that you have. It's automatically going to crop it to the zoomed middle. And if you actually start handling things like the top system bars, the top navigation system bars and things like that, it's good. All right, so now we've kind of gotten some gram-like effects, all right? What's something else that would be fun? I think it would be really cool to actually handle full screen automatically, right? So how do we even do that? There's no full screen button, right? If you notice, there's no button to take it into full screen. So how do we start with just adding a button? Well, this is really cool because all I have to do is now just give it a controller layout ID. And I'm just copying the actual Exoplayer controls here, and I'm already just using their styling. But as long as I use their names on these buttons, I don't actually have to handle any of this. It will happen automatically with Exoplayer. So Exoplayer will take care of all of this for me as long as I just use the same names. So if I wanted to have a different location for these buttons, don't show them, whatever, it would be super easy. So, all right. So cool. Yeah. Ooh, even a VR mode. It does have VR mode. All right. So now that we have that, we can establish that we can actually change it. And all right, I went ahead and added in here just an image button to the bottom right-hand corner of a full screen in and out button, so that we essentially force an orientation change, but we're not going to actually make it so that it only will hold it if the user's holding it in the other orientation, that it'll go back. And we can kind of show that here in just a moment. So what we're going to do is use just Kotlin synthetics, which may not everybody enjoy, but I do. Whatever. Just be responsible. We're just going to take that button that we have declared in this custom media control, and we're going to set an on-click listener to actually change the orientation from portrait to landscape. And we're going to put a 5-second delay on it, so that if the user actually doesn't move their device to horizontal, that it then switches it back to the vertical mode. And I've made a little function here to set the image so that it actually changes when the user is in full screen versus not in full screen, and actually will do so even if the user flips it themselves. So all we're doing here is listening for that configuration change. And by configuration change, we just mean moving it horizontal to vertical. And we're just going to set the image anyway here based off of that. So if it's not defined, we just want to make it the exit. It hasn't really happened before that's undefined, but safety matters. And as far as safety first, let's see how this looks. All right. Very, very cool. All right. So, wow. It's compiling so quickly today. I don't know how this works. So here we have our Exoplayer. And look at that. We got our little button. Our little button's so cool. All right. Let's see if it works. Oh, snap. All right, and it's waiting 5 seconds. Oh, and it turned it back. Wait, we have a full screen button. Ah! So I wanted to point out that this is actually super simple. You can handle the actual button configuration changes and things. Of course, I wouldn't normally put it all in one activity file, but it does make it easier for demonstration purposes. But yeah, this is super simple. So actually in 160, okay, so in less than 200 lines of code, realistically, right? So if we get rid of some extra padding and spacing, we've actually created a single Exoplayer instance that handles full screen, has custom UI components to it. It also has playlist support. It has support for multiple codecs. It's like an all-in-one box now. Wow. Did you think it was going to be that easy? Whoop, whoop. All right. Did you think it was going to be that easy? All right. Okay, cool. Yeah. I am way too hyped up for noon on a Saturday, I guess. So that's it for that portion. So let's go back to our regularly scheduled services and go through our kind of final accomplishments. So what did we actually do here? We actually made a bunch of different media types. We got a lot of playlist options. I wanted to quickly say that there are some awesome resources that will help you with any kind of extra features that you want to have, including a little plug for myself, which I actually haven't updated in over a year, so don't hate on me. But here is some of my information, and feel free to get in contact with me if you have any further questions. I'm very easy to reach on Twitter. Twitter is the place to hit me up.
Great, thank you, Stacy. It was a really, really interesting talk.
Thank you.
Maybe we have like one question, Katrik?
Yeah, I guess so. The question that we want to ask is it possible to read video with DRM or security? If so, is it easy?
So actually, there's a lot of already handled for you things as far as DRM goes, especially with HLS streams. But there is ways to do custom DRM, and they added additional DRM support in the last 2 versions that has made that substantially easier. It also automatically handles, especially with Dash and Smooth streaming, which are very heavy on the DRM support. If you remember Microsoft Silverlight, that's what they call smooth streaming now. And that is, you know, kind of what Netflix used to use a million years ago, if you remember. Yeah, so if you have to handle that stuff, they've got wonderful examples on it. DRM for the most part is actually handled if it's not too difficult. Yes, and you know, of course, like HTTPS streams and things like that, because Android doesn't like it if you don't, and it will yell at you. Some of the Bright Cove stuff, like a lot of older Bright Cove links and some of the older HLS streams and things like that, you have to like put in exceptions into your security file because they only have it on an HTTP link. But of course, that's, you know, update your stuff and then it won't be a problem.
Awesome.
Okay, cool.
It's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for talking. I'll hand it over to Antoine.
Yeah, it was a really, really good talk. Thank you so much, Stacy, for being with us as a speaker. And yeah, it was really interesting. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. So yes, Stacy, you want to say something?
Oh.
That, you know, feel free to grab the code and presentation on the bit.ly link. And yeah, please let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I'm always happy to help.
Awesome.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
And so now it's time for the party. I changed my screen to have like some party-related stuff. So yeah, you can join us for the party. It already started. You can just see, write the link on your browser, bit.ly join-devparty. And it will open a Google Meet link to join us and do a little party, and also with the prizes, we are going to find the winner who won the prizes we have. Thank you so much for everyone, mostly for our speakers, Stacy, Paul, and Nicola. It was really great to have you for our event. Also, thank you to my colleague, Kartik. Thank you so much for helping me.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for every attendees we had today.
Yeah. See you at the Google Meet.
Yeah, see you on the Google Meet. Thanks.
Thank you.